I went and shot a bunch of rolls at the Melbourne F1.
Fans could be seen scaling the debris fence.
And things got a bit crazy.
Coming within metres of speeding cars.
Pissed up Australians started breaking past race officials to get onto the track before the race was over. There was a bunch of people that were just stealing anything that wasn't bolted down, and in some cases things that were. It definitely made for some interesting photos. I got a few keepers that I think, portfolio worthy things. I also just had a really good time. So record attendance made for an interesting day, to say the least. So the first day I went in was the Friday. The weather was pretty dark and gloomy, and it was pretty quiet. It was only Formula 3 races and some supercars, and I think there was then like a vintage run of old cars as well. What was surprising for me was that there was actually a ton of school kids. So I think a bunch of schools must do Formula 1 excursions on the cheaper days. I took some photos on the first day, but really I was just sort of getting my bearings and figuring out just how massive the place was. So I did about 30,000 steps just doing a lap walking around the outside of the track, and then you can walk over these little bridges, and I did a sort of lap around the inside of the track too. And yeah, while I was walking around, I came across what I'm assuming is maybe one of Australia's largest military bases, or at least one of our major defence outposts, because there was a bunch of army stuff there. I've never seen such a display of our army might. But it was mainly made up of these like hot rods and souped up cars, which, it's a bit confusing. I'm not sure exactly what hot rods have to do with our defence program, but it might well be like the entirety of our land-based forces that they had on display there. But potentially the logic is that if we do get invaded and then they see that we've got a bunch of sweet cars, then maybe they'll just want to be friends and, not sort of take over the country, potentially. I'm not sure. But yeah, so the guys there, Team Army, they get the cars, revved up, and they'd rev up the kids and get everyone excited. Like I got revved up too. I was like, cool, sweet cars. But yeah, the cars all have like airbrushed army decals over them, and they looked sick, and they revved, and like there was fumes. It was pretty mad. We might have lost the Great Emu War of 1932, but in the battle for hearts and minds there on the grassy terrain of the F1 paddock here in 2023, I'd say it was a resounding victory for the Australian Defence Force. I really like these photos. So all the way from the Team Army guy in the car, all the way up to the kid that's on top of that tank van thing in the background. I just like the sort of balance of it all, and the way that your eye sort of gets led in through all the different figures in the photo. So I also went back in on Sunday. The sun was out in the morning. I jumped online and people were reselling tickets, so I bought one and headed back. Gonna try and knock out another 20,000 steps today, and hopefully a few more rolls because the sun's better. Australia's the third race in the F1 calendar after Bahrain and Saudi Arabia, but it's the first race of the season that actually sells alcohol. And you might have heard that Australians are notoriously fond of having a drink or three. And on top of all of that, there's also now this huge influx of filthy casuals like myself who only got into the F1 since the Drive to Survive TV show came out on Netflix. So it was potentially a pretty different crowd to the one that they're used to there, but maybe just heaps more of the same, just pissed up Australians doing dumb things. But yeah, the majority of the crowd was obviously fine, but yeah, if you've seen the news, you know that there was a bit of chaos towards the end there. There was a record crowd, so it was 120,000 more people there than the last time that they had the race in Melbourne, which was back in 2019 before COVID shut everything down. Interest in Formula 1 as a whole just skyrocketed after that show came out, and so yeah, there was definitely a lot more people stomping about the paddock. The film stocks that I had with me on the day were Portra 400 and some expired Portra 160. So yeah, all of the photos that you see are from either one of those, and you'll be able to really tell which is which as I get into these. But I really like the layers on this one. So there's the guy up the top on the balcony, the colourfully dressed lady on the dark reflection on the right, and then the darkly dressed lady on the light reflection on the left, and there is someone walking up directly in the middle of that main reflection there, but he gets a bit lost because he was wearing orange and there was an orange hoarding behind him. But as he got closer, then everyone else sort of moved out the way and the photo didn't look as good. As the day wears on, the drivers obviously battle it out to climb to the top of the podium, but the spectators also battle it out trying to climb to the tops of trees. Most of these photos are pretty boring, but I do like this one, again, just because it's a bit different and a bit simple, I guess, like myself. Now, after walking around and climbing trees, the average Australian can often be seen quenching their thirst with not one but 4 beers at a time. So regardless of their blood alcohol content though, Australians are very good at balancing and can often be found either on their tippy toes, like the guy here on the left, or standing on 2 blocks of wood that they brought from home, like these guys in the middle. Now, these might be all normal things, but I'd never seen people just stand on blocks of wood. I thought it was pretty smart. Now, you can spot the elites by the lanyards that they display around their necks, which just signals that they're better than you and that you shouldn't go anywhere near them. But unfortunately, even for me, a mere general admin ticket holder, I'd sometimes get glimpses of the non-ticket holders, perched atop chairs and bins, peering over our fence into our gilded cage. And this photo could have been good. There was like a silhouette, but the sun sort of shooting at me. There were people up on the balconies of the building in the background too, but again, you just can't really see them. I just sort of snapped it and walked away. Now, you could also go on a helicopter ride, and if you were lucky, you'd have a friend there who could hold onto your hat as you waited in line, and then when the helicopters took off, it wouldn't take your hat off with them. And here's a couple of pretty nothing photos, but the guy in the middle was just staring at his shoes for a while, and I thought that was funny. This was actually taken on the first day when it was gloomy and there was not much going on, so yeah, it was probably just bored out of his mind. But yeah, I can imagine that changed on the final day as everyone was breaking onto the track. But yeah, I do like the tiny little guy over on the left there. That little silhouette just sort of balances the image a little bit, but no one's probably going to notice that, and I'm just over analyzing my own work. I do like this one. This one's a bit easier to like. These guys just sort of popped out from behind this bin bag fence, so I like the different shades and like the light hitting the fence and then the movement of his tie and how they're sort of walking and looking at me. And I don't know if they're security, but yeah, I like the photo. Now, this one, I was looking just to get the tent sort of in line with the stand so it wasn't poking up and sort of making it all out of whack. What would have been cool is if I sort of squatted down a little bit and I could have got the guy in red to try and make it look like he was standing on the yellow cap of that star picket fence, but yeah, I didn't do that. Here's another one. I thought the reeds and stuff in the water in the foreground and that tiny little speck of a helicopter in the sky was enough to make this a bit more interesting than just a guy eating his lunch, but I was wrong. And I chased some seagulls to try and make myself feel better, but yep, that photo didn't work either. And then these lovely tradies up on the roof here flipped us off, which was really nice. I'm assuming they just pretended they had a job here at the MSAC. They shut down, it's the Melbourne Sports and Aquatic Centre. They shut it down because it's right smack bang in the middle of the F1. But yeah, perhaps they just had their high-vis shirts of invisibility, maybe carried a ladder under their arm and just sort of walked in and then got to go up to the roof and probably had the best seats in the house. So at this point, we were deliriously hungry and we went and got a taco bowl. So this is from the first day, actually. And as soon as we got them, I tried to shovel something into my mouth and I immediately dropped an enormous blob of guacamole and chipotle mayo directly onto the button on top of my camera. And I tried to suck it out straight away with my mouth, which got me a few weird looks. And then I just tried to do my best with a napkin. But only time will tell just how expensive that burrito bowl was. So then the Royal Air Force roulettes flew over and I got this semi-okay photo. I do prefer the one that I got on Invasion Day of the roulettes though. It's just a bit nicer, brighter, more interesting. On the subject of flying, more helicopters. This one's alright. The antenna of the truck, the rotor blade, they almost line up, but they don't. And then there was also aliens. Again, not an amazing photo, but just pressing the buttons and I'd don't mind it. So then I came across this spot, which I think it's right near turn 1 perhaps, and it seems to be a really popular spot because there's a gap between the grandstand and the track, and you're on a bit of a hill, so you actually get a bit of a decent vantage point over the cars coming through as well. So yeah, there was a ton of us general admin peasants all crammed in down there. I took this photo just as I was finishing up the roll, so it was the last photo on the roll because I wanted to reload before I squished right through everyone. And yeah, you can really see the difference from this one, which was again brand new Portra 400, and then I switched over to expired Portra 160, and yeah, instantly the colors are spot on here, but as we flick over you'll see they become a bit uneven. I did get one of my favorite pictures of the day in here though, so I really like how the expired film rendered all the colors and stuff. Yeah, it came out really well, but you can see straight away from the first photo just how packed it is in there and how the sky colors and the skin tones have gone a bit wonky. I like the dreadlocks on the right of this one, and this character we've got here on the left, he's got this cool little, you know, mustache and little Shannon Knoll facial hair combo too. But this is the one that I really like. So you come in from the guy in the hat on the top left, you then follow the railing down from his eye line and you get to the big guy that's coming towards me. Everyone here is standing on chairs or actually on the railings of the scaffolding. So this guy on the right that's coming towards me was really tall. Then you come down and you see that there's a guy smashing a burger right there in the middle. You notice then that the guy on the left has actually tied himself to the fence with his jumper so that he can stand up a bit easier. His right arm that's sort of just out of frame is holding onto one of the railings of the fence too, to again help keep him upright. Your eye then travels through the middle of the frame and you can see there's another kid further up that's tied himself to the fence as well. If you squint, you can see the guys in the orange hats, one of them's throwing up a peace sign, and above that there's the guys in the suits that sort of point you back towards the big guy's hat who's coming towards me. Now, what would have tipped this photo over to being a really great photo, in my opinion, would be if I'd got the guy, the first guy who's tied to the fence, if I'd got his arm holding that railing, because as the two guys in the suits point you back to the big guy's hat, the guy's hat has a Melbourne Storm logo on it. Now, Storm is the Melbourne rugby team, and their mascot and their logo has his arms in the same position as the first guy on the left, who's got his beer in his hand. But instead of holding a fence railing, he's holding a lightning bolt, and his other hand's open. It looks like it could easily be holding a beer, but it's not. But again, it's just like a little detail which probably no one would ever notice, but I think if I had that, it would just be this tiny little cool thing, because there's so much happening within the frame. But yeah, that's probably just me over analyzing my own work and clutching at fence palings trying to make great photos, or whatever that saying is. Now, on to the chaotic final stages of the race. So I'd never been to the F1 before, but as I was aimlessly walking around, overheard some people talking about getting down to the gates to get let onto the track after the race. Right, apparently they're about to open up those, and then we can all get on the track. So all these people are going to want to get in there as well though, so shit's about to get hectic, I think. And yeah, I happened to be right near where pit lane was by chance, and that's where all the cars go after the race, and it turns out everyone wants to get down there as soon as possible. I'm not sure why, maybe just to like look at the cars as they pack up, or maybe you can, oh, maybe they do the podium and stuff there. Yeah, that would make sense. Everyone starts to, well, not everyone, but a lot of people start to leave the grandstands when there's a few laps left, so they can be, you know, one of the first down at pit lane as they open up the track to the spectators, and then I guess they get a good spot as they do the, you know, the Schumacher champagne over everyone. So there was a fair crowd even before I'd arrived down at these gates, but with the ensuing chaos of the race, there was just so much time for the crowd to leave the stands, come down and sort of pile up to these gates to get let onto the track. A quick recap of what actually happened. So it was on lap 53 of 56, so right at the end, someone hit a wall, their tyre flew off. That turned into a red flag, so the race had to come to a complete stop and then restart again with only 2 laps to go, and everyone's got cold tyres, and so as soon as they took off, there was a big crash on turn 1. 2 more cars crashed into each other, like I think the next turn after that. And so immediately after the race had been restarted, it needed to get stopped again and restarted once more. So after the second red flag, there seemed to be a lot of confusion from the race organisers as to what to do, whether they start it again or just call the positions before the restart or after the second red flag. But then they decided that technically the race wasn't over, so they sent everyone out under a safety car, which, you're still going over 100 Ks around the place under a safety car. But they sent them all out under a safety car just to do one final lap. And so in all that time to come to that decision and to stop everyone and to restart and to figure it all out, just heaps of people came down. So the crowd was massive, all waiting to get down to onto the track at pit lane. And you can imagine on top of all of that, it's been a long day in the sun, drinking piss for the vast majority of the attendees. And so I arrived down there, and it was a bustling crowd. Things were happening, and while I was waiting, I got a few pictures that I like. So for this one, I like the light down the side of the two guys, and then the silhouettes of the people in the grandstand. So especially that one solitary figure right up the top there. And this was the grandstand that was right above me. And I was waiting for something to balance this out. And then, as more people were getting up from their seats, they started lining up along the railing. So that started to look cool. And then a helicopter flew over, and you've got all the, the actual TV cameras and stuff on the right. So lots of aerials and stuff. Just makes it pretty interesting. I like this one. So the little girl on her dad's shoulders, sort of leaning over, and then the guys hanging off the grandstand sort of leaning in, all sort of into the middle of the frame, and the fence railings above them sort of balance them out as well. And I really like this one of the kids getting told off and to get down off the scaffolding, and especially the kid in all pink trying to look all staunch. He ended up getting down too. So then they sent a few cops down to sort of push everyone back so that they could actually open these gates up and let everyone onto the track. And you can see in the background that there were a bunch of people from further up the course that had already made it all the way down to the pits. So potentially some of those track invaders that you saw on the news. But for me, as this crowd kept building, and hearing commentary about the record crowd attendance while I was walking around during the day, and I'd recollecting news of recent crowd crushes that had happened around the world, I tried to take it a little bit easy. So I jumped up on one of the barriers just to sort of check everything out before I sandwiched myself in between the two gates with everyone else. And I did get a quick little video of just the swarm of people, or the flow of people just gushing into the track. And got a couple of pictures as well. Once I was on the track though, so I walked against the tide away from pit lane, because I saw a bunch of people literally sprinting as if their life depended on it to get down there. If the race hadn't had 2 restarts, all of this would have been perfect. Sun behind me, golden hour, would have been great. But so I just had my big flash out and was just blasting everyone as they were running towards me. These were shot on the expired 160, so it obviously wasn't the best film stock for this setting now that the light had gone. If you're a lover of expired film tones, then you'll probably enjoy these next ones. So this girl's great. The sheer determination on her face as she runs, and the motion blur on her shoe. This guy might have semi-snatched this plastic Rolex sign off someone, or at least it was a pretty close battle between 2 people as they ripped it off the fence at the same time. This guy with the exit sign, that's surely going to be a treasured family heirloom that'll be passed down for generations. This one I really wish it had turned out. These guys were racing 2 little remote control F1 cars down the track, but this was the last shot on the roll. For some reason it just didn't work. And then I couldn't get a photo of the next car, which you can see just sort of in the background of this image. And then I would have been closer to the guy with the actual controller, and it could have been cool. I love this kid. When you get that feeling and you're just really pumped up and you've stolen a generic metal pole at the Formula One, not even a sign, just a metal pole with some spray paint on it. It's I don't know that feeling, but this kid does, and good on him. Now these guys, they were running through everyone pretending they were cars for making car sounds. So, yeah, that was a thing that they were doing. And here's one of the crash cars being removed from the track. I had no idea that this guy was up on the back of the truck until, you know, the flash lit him up. But by the look on his face, he's just completely over it. And yeah, judging from the news coverage that I saw after I got home, then yeah, I get it. Now this one's funny. So I was just loading another roll of film and I was walking along, looking down at the camera, just getting it all sorted. And then, yeah, these guys just sort of appeared out of nowhere and blasted me with their horn and scared the shit out of me. And then, but I'd just loaded the film. So as they drove past, I was like, "You got me, you bastards." And I flashed them and blasted them back. And they loved it. I loved it. I love this photo. I just can't help but smile when I'm looking at these dickheads. Like, they're just having a grand old time messing around on the track. Now I got this nice picture, some seagulls at sunset. I just like the colours. And then this quiet, really serene picture. It's a good contrast to the madness that came before it. I think it's got good layers. So the fences, the trees, the lake, the chemtrails that the government's using to control our minds.